Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today. We're going to be talking about Canada's Agriculture Day. This is sponsored by Canada Beef, and I'm excited to be here with several of my Canadian beef advocates, Christine, Sarah, Johnson family, and the Watsons representing Sage today. So really great to chat with everybody. We're really excited to be talking about Canada's Agriculture Day to get all of your perspectives. We've done a little bit of research on everybody here, and again, I think you all have very fascinating stories and interesting things to share. So without further ado, maybe we'll just start with a little bit of an introduction with everyone. So maybe we'll start with the Watsons. If you can just kind of tell everybody a little bit about yourselves and where you're from and what you do.
Wow, we just want to let you know that we're honored to be in this chat, and thank you for having us. Our earliest dated history goes back to 1899. James Cheney, on my husband's side of the family, started showing purebred cattle. And one of the first purebred cattle shows we showed in was in 1903. So we've been in cattle for a long time, just different breeds of cattle.
Awesome. Well, thank you and welcome. Johnson family, we'll go over to you.
Yeah, so my great-great-grandfather came from Norway in 1905 and started the homestead here. So I'm the 5th generation on the farm. We're primarily a cow-calf operation, but we also grow crops and have feeder cattle as well.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Sarah.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here today and hear all of your stories. Myself, I grew up on a purebred cattle operation in Bash, Alberta. We sold genetics internationally when I was growing up. At 16, we actually left the farm, and I still remained in it with my auntie and uncle, just helping them in the day-to-day stuff and at cattle shows still at that point. And then I married a guy who grew up on a ranch himself. So his family has commercial cattle, and they are now a century farming, just over a century. And my husband's family has a really interesting story where they were mixed operation. And then in the late 90s, my husband's dad decided that he was going to convert the land back into grass. So he's been using holistic management practices since the late 90s and is very well versed in it and continues to mentor people in the industry as they take on their own holistic management journeys. So we currently now have our own operation. It's very small and it's mostly to keep us sane at this point, but we hope to grow and expand it as we keep going. And I currently work in agriculture doing video production where we tell stories about other ranchers. So it's really exciting to hear all of yours.
That's awesome, Sarah. And I know you're going to touch on a lot of topics that we're going to be going through today. So I'm really interested to get your perspective as well. Thank you for being here. Christine, last but not least.
I've been a beef ambassador for a number of years, but I have an interesting story. I was actually vegetarian for most of my adult life, and I ended up marrying a beef farmer. So I'll let John tell you about his family farm.
From my perspective, our family on both sides of my family, we've been farming one way or another since as far back as we know. I got history from everything from Saskatchewan to Manitoba, all through Ontario. I don't know how far it goes back. I just know that all the records I have, we've been farming before that. So it's been a while. And currently we're on Manitoulin Island. So that's another location for our farm. My family came up, we had planned a big expansion in the start of the 80s, got hit with the big interest rates hikes. So my father at the time then decided to just go straight to cow-calf, and we stayed on Manitoulin. So that's why we're here now for having the farm we have now. So yeah.
I love it. And it's so great to get people from like all across Canada together. And again, one of the powers of Zoom and in our modern times now, to be able to do this and to have these conversations. So we'll have to just come off, Family Day, and we're celebrating Canada's Agriculture Day. So I want to kind of learn a little bit about generational, like multi-generations on farms and what it's like to work together. And I'm going to go to you, Maya. Like, I know you work with your family on the farm. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like working with different generations on a farm?
Yeah, so there's currently 3 generations working on our farm. So my grandpa, my dad, and then me and my sister. And so everyone kind of gets to do what they love to do. And yeah, it's really great.
So just to add to that, so I really appreciate my father in how he kind of handled things and giving me responsibility at a very young age. And so I'm trying to balance that and trying to, I mean, all of us have different interests. And so trying to get everybody really managing a different aspect of it that they like, and so that they make decisions. I mean, everybody obviously makes good decisions and make mistakes, but allowing that to happen so that, you know, everybody feels like they have a control of a part of the operation. And I'm a bit of a micromanager, so that's kind of tough some days, but I know that if I want everybody to work together and enjoy it, I've got to step back and, you know, allow, you know, my dad to make mistakes and my girls to make mistakes, and actually often they make better decisions than I do. So I have to tell myself that every day.
I love it. I love it. Does anyone else work on a multi-generational farm right now, or has in the past, that can kind of contribute and give us some insight on what it's like?
I grew up on a multi-generational ranch south of Medicine Hat, and my grandfather and grandmother were in the same yard as us. My aunt and uncle were in the same yard as us. So, you know, some of the challenges is transition. That's the biggest challenge that we see. And it was kind of obvious to me early that I would have to fly the nest in order to do my own ranching operation. So it creates some a great learning area of learning for you. You can get that historical information transferred from generation to generation. Logistics can be good and bad because, you know, there are different ideas and different ways to do things, and we have, you know, moving from one generation to the next can be really challenging.
Yeah, and I think we're going to touch a little bit more upon that because, you know what, I'm very curious to hear how farming has evolved through the generations, right? And what, you know, maybe like some of the younger people that are coming into farming are sort of bringing to the table and what the vision is. But before we get to that, like I want to talk a little bit more about agriculture. And again, like some of you have come from different careers, like Christine, you came from a city, if I'm not mistaken, right? And came into that. So like, what do you find that's most rewarding about a career in agriculture, and what brought you there?
Well, like I said, I used to live in the city, but I married a farmer. And I think the most rewarding thing is living off the land, being close to nature, and, you know, being with the animals. And you know where your food comes from. You know how, like, the animals are treated. That's a reward in itself.
Sarah, how about you? Now, you obviously have met a lot of people. You have the background now in kind of digital and storytelling, as well as also being on a farm and having it yourself. So I mean, I'm interested in getting your perspective about that. Like what is so rewarding about the career that you're in right now?
I absolutely love my career. It's like a field trip every day. And I'm so grateful for that, because part of it is I think that the number one thing I've learned, and this goes for what I grew up in, which was learning, you know, we would have people coming to the farm all the time from different ranches and different operations across the world. So it'd be Australia, Mexico, everywhere. And, you know, no matter what, and it's the same thing at this point in my career as we continue to travel around operations in Canada, it's the people, man. Like they are so incredible. And it's not just incredible in terms of their kindness, because genuinely, they are just truly great people. They're community minded. You go out and, you know, you go into their homes and they invite you in constantly to share with their family a meal or some of those little things. But past that, what really has, you know, struck me at this point in my career is that you meet so many people who have these diverse stories, these challenges and these obstacles, and they are some of the most creative souls, ranchers who exist. So, you know, they go through things like drought, like we've seen in this past year. They have to figure out how to expand an operation, as you've heard, from to allow more family members to come in. There's a lot of different skills that it takes to ranch. And so each operation we go to, we hear another person's story on how they navigated that and how they sort of turned themselves into these experts in areas you would never imagine. It might be the environment, it might be areas around something like manufacturing. Even we just did a story on that. So they're very incredibly smart people to talk to, and it's really interesting. No matter which farm and ranch you land on, you're always going to learn something new, and I think that's why I love it so much. Is I feel like it just makes me smarter every single time I go to another location.
I love that. You know what? And it's funny because one of the sayings that I always have is people are my drugs. So really, you know what? It hits home. I get inspired. I feed off the energy. And you know what? Hearing stories is just such an incredible way to connect and energize yourself and then want to share those messages. So on that note, I'd maybe like to kind of go around to everyone and say, like, is there someone in agriculture that's inspired you? Like, again, I'm sure that there are many, as Sarah just said, but maybe we'll start with the Watson family. Like, is there someone that really inspired you in agriculture and that you look up to and that maybe you learn from?
Well, I would have to say it was my grandfather. He kind of took me under his wing as a young child and really taught me a lot when dealing with animals and dealing with the land and, living in harmony with both and overcoming challenging times versus the good times. So I think that's been my mentor and my he's no longer with us, but he's still here in the knowledge that he's passed down over the years.
Awesome.
Just to add to that, I just want to say that I don't have one specific person that inspired me, but I just know that I am on social media, and through Instagram, I've connected with a lot of different farmers, ranchers throughout all of Canada and actually in the United States. And I've seen how they've done things and given me ideas, and they've have received some information from me. So I think the sharing that can go along with social media has been really helpful, and it connects you with other producers and it doesn't keep you isolated. It really shows you that if you're going through something tough, you're not the only one going through something tough, which is great because there's lots of people. Our country's so diverse.
That's lovely. It's a great sentiment. Johnson family, how about you?
Yeah, so I also agree that there's many inspiring people on social media that you see and give you new ideas. But the one person is obviously my dad, who's inspired me just growing up and seeing him head outside every day and just love what he does. And the knowledge and care he has for the animals is very motivating and inspiring to me.
It's lovely. Andrew, do you want to?
Well, just getting back to the social media thing, I follow a number of agriculture people, and like the crazy thing is I don't even agree with them all, but I find their passion just infectious and just challenging my ingrained ideas almost every day. And it just, makes me think of the other side often. And I just find that I can learn every day, and some things I'll use and some things I won't, but I love looking at different perspectives than what I have and learning from that. And, just one name that comes to mind is Dave Asprey, who says he's a biohacker, which I have no idea what that is, but I just find his ideas on nutrition just to be refreshing, even though I don't actually agree with them all, but it's just refreshing to see a different perspective. So.
And you know what? And I love that. And I love that, you're open to that dialogue, right? Because I think that's such an important thing. And, a lot of times we kind of go with like kind of clickbait or, big kind of topics that just kind of get you in, but really don't tell the full story, right? And, having that dialogue, and it's really great to hear that someone like that can inspire you, even though you have dichotomous views. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Christine, John, let's go over to you.
You answer this one.
I think my dad would be the hands down one, because he always was pushing the envelope and things we can do on the farm, trying new ideas. He was generally very far ahead in terms of trying new things. He was doing cover crops and all that in cropping practices in the 70s. So, and when we moved to Manitoulin in 1980, like we were the first ones on the island that did any tile drainage. He was also very much involved in the local co-op and for other organizations to help the community of agriculture. Very strong proponents of 4-H and the value of those programs. So, and also I've been fortunate to have met some great people along the way in different areas of study and that, and it's all very educational. You never want to be so confident in your ideas that nobody wants it to rock the boat for you, so to speak. And it's good that you can justify them because often you learn something from that. And I know one of my dad's biggest philosophies too was always to be doing at least one experiment a year to see what you can improve upon. Even if they don't work, you know what not to do them. So to keep moving ahead. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Sarah?
Yeah, well, for me, I'm going to do twofold, so I'm sorry.
No.
My first one would be in my early years would be my grandparents. And I think it's a little bit different in the sense of, they taught me lots about farming and cattle and everything. But really what I gained from them the most is their sense of community. And when you find something, you fix it, that there's a problem you fix. And so they developed a youth program for keeping young people in the farming industry and to help them develop new herds. And so it's been, I think it's on to its almost 40th year of programming right now, and has had many youth go through it and continues to push out industry leaders. And so for myself, I really admire that they saw that, young people weren't building herds, and they took initiative and tried to find a way to solve it. So it's really cool for me to know that and to see it continue to thrive. And a lot of the programs across Canada are built off of that. So it's pretty neat. And then the second I would say is actually my husband's family. I find them really incredible, my father-in-law and mother-in-law, in terms of how they pivoted and they went and stick to this day to their guns on what they believe. And they believe in, the way ranching can heal the environment. And so they continue to amaze me and teach me things all the time when we're in their operation, where we learn about, soil health. My father-in-law is very heavy into it right now, and how we can positively impact the environment. And that's a huge passion of mine. So I'm very thankful for all those people in my life, and I'm sure there's 1,000 more I could say.
That's awesome. And you touched on a key word, environment. So now, as we're talking about Canada's Agriculture Day, right? The words agriculture and environment are often intertwined. And, when we're talking about beef and beef farming and ranching, like what farming practices have evolved, and like how do they impact the environment? I'm curious to hear, because again, we have several different sizes of ranches here, and several different practices, and I'm curious to kind of understand a little bit more about how the practices impact the environment. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, Sarah, you're still on. Maybe we'll start with you and then we'll go around.
Sure. Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things I learned in not only from my father-in-law, but also traveling around, we work a lot with groups who do a lot of holistic management, but also who do ranching in general. Just traditional ranching. And I think that what I've learned the most is that it's sort of keep it simple. We sometimes get in the way of what the cattle are great at, which is to actually regenerate the soil. And soil is one of the most important things. And in terms of food production, may it be ranching or in crops. And I think that where we've evolved as an industry is, what I've seen in the industry is that there's been huge focus on soil health and how we get the microbes going to work for us. So cattle play a huge role in that, as does the way that we graze, which is what my father-in-law has taught us, which is rotational grazing. So we do rotational grazing, which is basically leave half, take half, and then rest. And those principles have held true. We, in the last 12 years since we've been on our operation, we've started to see a lot of different wildlife come back. May it be the hawks, or even some of the coyotes and weasels and things like that. So, you can start to see the earth, by working with it, sort of start to heal itself. And I think that's a pretty incredible thing.
Yeah, it's definitely an incredible thing. I remember my first actual interview was with Sandra Voss, who's a farmer in Ontario, who, yes, took this like kind of arid land and was able to turn it into, again, like a thriving ecosystem, right, through bringing cattle onto the farm. And again, I think that's a fantastic story, and the understanding that people have to have. So, what about Watson family? I'm gonna go over to you.
Like we live in one of the driest climates in Canada, so we're challenged almost yearly with rainfall and moisture and watering, and so we've often focused on rotational grazing. We focused on diversifying our agricultural lands to have different locations for our cattle. We have land in the high country in Cypress Hills at about 4,000 feet. We have various other spots that we rotate around. And what I've noticed since I can remember the 70s, we have more diverse wildlife on our lands at this point in time than we did back then. And that's just the way it is. We've done things like making our watering sites not in the riparian areas. We've done a lot of that work with that. We've done a lot of work with, the focusing on grazing and looking at your plants, look at your flora and fauna and seeing what's there and how we can, work in harmony and make it better for everything in our environment.
Awesome. Christine, John, I want to go back to you because I know, John, you were already touching on this topic a little bit earlier.
Yes, well, environmental wise, well, I guess to start off with, Manitoulin Island, 90% of it has less than a foot of topsoil. So soil is very important to us. And we've been doing like fencing off waterways and control access to bush lots and that for pasture management and rotational pasture management. We've been doing since the 80s here. Our environment is so important to us. We must look after our land and soil and the soil health, or we don't gain in production and be beneficial for us. That is one area that I'm certainly increasing on, is my understanding of soil health and trying to help that area out as well. So like most of our pastures are long-term pasture systems, and they've been working well for us. And we do have quite a few flora and fauna and animals of interest here. We're some of the highest white-tailed deer counts in North America are right in our area. So,
yeah. I feel I need to come out and visit because this all sounds really beautiful. I'm like the urban jungle here in contrast. So, yeah. Johnson family, how about you? We'll go to you.
Yeah, over my farming career, of course, I don't really remember the 80s, but of course that was extreme droughts, and then we went through extreme moisture where half our land was underwater, and now we're back to a period of drought. So, right now we've pretty much got piped water to all our pastures. Of course, that wasn't a priority 10 years ago when we were all underwater, but you really, all these things, keep, the pipe water does keep cattle out of those sensitive areas. And of course we have a lot of natural bush in our country. So we have a lot of wildlife. Some of that bush is being cleared by other farmers, which is interesting because now all of a sudden with a lot of snow, we're having problems with, blowing and snow that weren't considered so all of a sudden now we're looking at more shelter belt ideas and different stuff like that. But as people have touched on, the soil health is becoming bigger and bigger, and manure management, and when I was young, everything was kept in a yard, where now we're feeding out in fields and pastures and managing the manure just so much better. And not only is it better for that, but the cattle health is also greatly improved when you can just keep things spread out and keep it more as what the wildlife would have done, before man was kind of involved. So.
Right. Interesting. And now again, on Agriculture Day, we're really trying to. Oh, Sarah, yeah, go ahead. Of course you can. Yes.
We work so heavily with conservation groups, and I think that they've been trying for a long time to reach a public audience, to have them understand one thing. And conservation and ranchers go hand in hand. They work side by side. Conservation groups understand they need ranchers, and part of that is because particularly when it comes to a lot of different things, but particularly watershed health. And when we look at watershed health, basically everybody lives in a watershed, but grass and cattle have this really cool symbiotic relationship. that can create really deep tap roots and create really healthy soils. And what that does is it filtrates out the water. So that basically, I guess one way that conservation group explained it was that you have a few different options in life. We can invest in water treatment plants, or you can invest in ranchers. And ranchers do an incredible job of caring for these ecosystems so that our watersheds are clean and healthy. And a lot of that, when you hear Wade talk about doing offsite watering, making sure the grass is healthy so that it does all those ecological goods and services, is really key to maintaining the quality of water that all humans across, Alberta for sure, drink, if not all of Canada. And so I think they play a really critical role in for people in the city outside of eating, really tasty beef, that sometimes is under-recognized.
So I'm curious, and this is not, I know, one of the questions that I maybe originally had for everyone, but like, how do we convey that message? How do we get it across? Like, what can we be doing better to get that messaging? And I know, like, for example, when I watched Guardians of the Grasslands, shout out to you, but it's phenomenal. Like, it changed the way that I started thinking about this relationship, right? Because again, like, we have perceptions, and perceptions that unfortunately are often not based on facts. They're based on, again, like a headline or a short quip that somebody read, right? How do we communicate better? Like, what can we be doing? And I'm curious, again, if anybody maybe wants to pipe in on that. Sarah, we'll go back to you to start. Yeah, but then we'll go across, and I'm curious to hear from everybody, like, what we could be doing and how, again, we can kind of get those relationships formed. Like,
I think that I think as we increased our ability to produce more food, we got less farms. And so I think people became a little removed from food production. And I think at this point, and with social media, you've heard so many people speak about reaching out to producers across Canada, but I think a lot of people are doing that too with the public. And I think, with something like Guardians of the Grasslands, finding a common spot to start is really important. There's a lot more conversation to have around that video, and to continue to converse and carry those discussions. And I hope that the ranchers that you see today, or the ones across Canada, are the people who continue to engage with the public on those topics and share their own stories. And I think that we've been seeing that, and I think we're making some traction now. In my mind, I've been doing this for about 12 years, and you can most definitely see the difference at this point, but we've got lots more to do. Totally.
Watson family, do you?
I just think we just need to share what we do on our own ranch. We all have access to social media, and I think it's really important just to share what you do, and how you're producing for your cattle ranch. And I like to show people how we're ethically working on our ranch, and share all that information with them, so they can gain a better knowledge of, like, the beef doesn't come from the grocery store, it comes from us, and there's lots of things in between. But to show how we treat our animals and how they're ethically raised, I think that goes a long ways to helping people understand where it comes from.
All right, and I think we realize now more so than ever that there's kind of a corporate agenda media out there that is not showing all sides of the equation to people. And I think that's our biggest challenge, because there's some drivers that want to push people towards more highly processed foods instead of going back to the basics that we all deep down know are better, the whole foods and foods that have less processing, less manufacturing. So I think that's our biggest challenge is getting that alternate message at time across, that the media that is not always telling you things in your best interest.
Johnson family, how about you?
Well, I think we're seeing a consumer that is just growing an interest in what they're eating, and they're and especially with social media, they're actually hungry to look and to get closer to their food, which I think is awesome. And as I said, just a more natural, kind of the old way of doing things is now, I guess, cool, but yet, I mean, it's that's what we all know is the right way. And so I think it's, with social media and stuff, it's evolving. I mean, we really don't direct market much, and yet it's just amazing the interest that we have when we post videos or stories on the farm, because you know the general public is hungry for those stories. So.
Yeah, and I can say from that perspective, you know, so much of what we do, like in terms of like media tours and such, like whenever we're doing anything that's on a farm, like the interest is so high and people are so excited to get back out of the city and exploring. And again, I'd love to see those relationships continue to be formed everywhere across Canada, right? I think that's super important to really kind of connect everyone and have more of an understanding of our food and where it comes from. I'm going to go to you because, like, you know, what does the future look like? Like, you're now the next generation kind of coming up, right? Like, what do you see? Where do you see it going? And maybe, like, what advice would you give to any young people that are considering a career in agriculture?
Yeah, so I actually moved away from the farm this summer and moved to the city for 2 months, and that was long enough to get me back to the farm. So yeah, I see agriculture just getting bigger and bigger, especially with social media being able to just show the stories. And it's almost like a lifestyle that people want to live now more than before, just seeing how we live and how much freedom we have just out on the farm. It's pretty good, yeah.
So you think that the next generation is the next generation there? Like, is it there? Or is it something that we do have to think about? I know a lot of you are on sort of, you know, already family farms and sort of ingrained in it, right? But is that enough? Is that enough to keep it going? Or do we need more people to get into agriculture?
Well, I think, like, when I graduated, I didn't tell anybody I was planning on farming because it was embarrassing. It was a shameful thing to do. And now, and I'm not even talking on a big scale or anything. Now it's trendy, like it's awesome, and we need to encourage that. And I mean, of course, we have a larger farm, but whether you have 10 chickens and 2 cows, I mean, that relationship with nature and with I think it just teaches you a lot about life.
Yeah. Anyone else want to share anything on that?
I think the message I'd like to give to the youth is diversification. And being from a multi-generational thing, just because we've done things a certain way doesn't mean it always has to be done that way. So I think with the younger generations that are coming up, they may have new ideas. And in the area that we live in, I think although we're a cattle ranch, I think there's lots of diversification for different types of animals on farms and ranches. And I think with smaller areas and people that want to get into agriculture, they could easily start out with doing sheep or goats for both meat and milk production. So I think diversification is really important for the youth. If they can't get into a large scale operation, I think they very easily could get into a small scale operation and start there.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Sarah, what do you see now with your storytelling, right? With, like, again, like, who's following? Is it like, are you getting that traction from like a younger generation that's interested?
Yeah, I think we are. I think the time's right now to start to reconnect with each other again. I think that food, environment, all of the issues that really you know, we consider on a farm or ranch every day is already on people's minds. You know, you can hear different people in this chat right now talking about different people they're listening to around food. And I think that these are great topics. And I think making those connections more and more is going to become huge in terms of where young people fit into the industry. I think I really appreciate all perspectives. I think that I see on the ground level a lot of people coming back into operations and taking over their family operations. But I also see a lot of people who never grew up in agriculture getting into it. And so we have a lot of friends and a lot of stories that we've created over the years of people, you know, making deals with acreages for 2 acres and starting there, and then expanding and growing it. And then we've also seen a lot of urban agriculture, which I think is really cool. And I think is a really great way to start to connect people back to their food. Once you take care of those backyard chickens, you begin to have a better understanding of what it means to take care of a life. And I think that that's a big thing. thing. And so I think the more and more we continue to share the stories, the more and more people reconnect with the idea of getting their hands in dirt and raising those little animals. I think that we're going to start to see a natural progression. But I do think that as an industry, the most important thing we can do moving forward is continue to open up to the public. I think, we were so scared for so long because it was often, on the defense and attack, but we do incredible things that need to be told. So maybe, right now we're talking, doing projects on food waste and how cattle solve some of those issues. And then we're also talking about big issues like wildfires and how cattle contribute to saving homes and communities. And so these are stories that the public often don't consider or see, and maybe even see as a nuisance sometimes. And so reaching out and sharing a bigger worldview picture of agriculture and inviting them into our operations is going to be key so that they can see for themselves.
Speaking of inviting into your operations, I want to get invited into your homes now and have a quick look at what do you do? Do you do anything now for specifically Canada's Agriculture Day? What do you do to celebrate locally? Maybe Watson, we'll start with you.
Well, of course, we're going to have a great big beef meal of some sort. For sure. Probably steak, because that's our favorite family meal that we have here. But every day at our ranch is Agricultural Day. We love our ranch. We work on it every day. People don't realize you don't ever get a true day off. You're always doing something. But at the same time, we love what we do. So it's not as challenging as it could be if you didn't love it.
Johnson family, how about you?
Yeah, I could pretty much echo what we heard there. Well, we enjoy cooking as a family, so we might try a new beef recipe of some kind. And with every day being Agriculture Day, as we've heard, and just the passion, but we are planning to do a little holiday here in the next week, but the effort, it does take an effort, because there isn't really the farm needs to continue on, and sometimes it's actually, we often joke it's easier just to stay at home and work than to get away, but you do need to get away a bit too. So
yeah, totally. Sarah, anything on your end?
Do you want to know what? For me, I would say that I love that there's different days to celebrate people, but I think it's important that we continue to share stories every day. And so for myself, I'll probably do what I always do, and that's share stories of the people that we get to cross paths with and are fortunate enough to be able to share that story. And I really hope that by doing some of that it helps other people in cities and in towns that might not be able to be as close to agriculture as the rest of us every day, get to also celebrate the humans that really contribute to a big piece of their life, which is food every single day. And so I hope they enjoy it, and I hope they enjoy celebrating the people who have contributed so much to them.
Amazing. All right, we're getting a little bit low on time. So you know what, maybe I'm just going to kind of go again one more time around. And, is there one important message that you want to convey to people watching this video on Canada's Agriculture Day? And, after you maybe kind of convey your message, can you also let people know how to follow you? Because again, I think you're all very interesting. You're all doing fascinating things. So if you could give a shout out on how people can follow you. So we'll start with the Watson family.
Well, I guess my big thing that I'd like just to say to everybody is know where your food comes from and find out how you can source local foods, all the way from your chicken to your eggs to your local greenhouses to your local producers, and try to support local first. That's how I feel about my food, and I like to know where it comes from. The second thing I'd like to say is that you can go ahead and give me a follow on Jolene G. Watson. I just kind of have a snapshot of what our life is and what we do, and that's on Instagram. That's the social media that I'm most active on, and where I follow other people.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Johnson family?
Yeah, I guess the message is you know, your food is such a huge part of your day, and you know, have fun with it. And you know, if you have an opportunity to support a farmer, take advantage of that. And you know, so much of our socialization and everything is around our food, and just embrace that, and just remember the passion that our farmers have in growing it. And Maya, you kind of look after the social media here. So
yeah, so you can find us on Instagram. Our Instagram is Johnson_livestock.
Awesome.
So yeah, I used to do the Instagram, but I have to admit, Maya's videos are a lot more entertaining than mine were. So
there's some progression. I like it. Sarah, up to you for some last words.
For myself, I want to say thank you. I think that thank you to everybody who continues to support Canadian beef and Canadian products and ranchers and farmers. But then also, it's been a really tough few years in food production. And I think that there's a lot of people along the way that contribute to getting our products from this, you know, these operations into the bellies of other humans. And so I want to say thank you to them. It's incredible that we as a country get to celebrate each other. And so I really look forward to seeing all the posts on that day and continuing to celebrate what makes, you know, Canadian food so great.
And how do people follow you?
And they can follow me at my personal page would be rather boring, but you can come to Storybrokers Media House, and that's on Facebook and Instagram.
Amazing, amazing. All right, I'm just going to switch the view now I'm going to go to gallery, so we're all together here. So I'm just going to wrap up and say it was an absolutely pleasure to be able to chat with all of you today. Thank you so much for taking this time out. Again, these conversations are super important to have, and again, your insight was incredible. I feel inspired. And so one of the big things for Canada's Agriculture Day this year is raising a fork. So if you do have a fork, let's all just like raise our forks, and I want to raise my fork. That's okay. I want to raise my fork to all of you and thank you. And again, you know what? It's been my pleasure, and I wish you all the best, and look forward to, hopefully now that COVID is kind of becoming an endemic, you know, being able to get back out and explore and actually meet all of you in person, because again, I think, you know, having those connections in real life is so important. And again, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for everything that you do. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.